Welcome to the channel tribe. In this session of Fireside Chat, we are having Raj Subramanian discussing on how to start your public speaking journey.
So without further ado, I would like to welcome Raj on stage now. And Raj is an international keynote speaker. He's an author. He's a tech career coach. He helps people land their dream job and become successful leaders. He's a sought-after speaker at various conferences like Eurostar, Agile Testing Days. He has appeared on a lot of TV channels like BBC, CBS, to name a few. He has appeared in numerous podcasts and publications like Authority Magazine, Goodman Project, Entrepreneur, to name a few. And I think he's one of the best suitable people to talk on this topic. And let's crunch his mind and let's welcome Raj on stage. Hi, Raj, you're on stage now.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction, man. Makes me feel super special. Although I'm a really average guy, but thank you for that. Super excited to be here. And before I start, some housekeeping stuff I wanted to discuss. First thing first, the most important thing is, how many of you have had dinner? If so, then put a smiley face on the chat window, because I think that's important to have energy to keep up with me. Okay, Jayesh said, okay, there's some people who had dinner there. Okay, nice. Okay, I see at least some people had dinner so that you have some energy to talk. Another quick question is, how many people are joining outside India? If so, then put a thumbs up. I'm just curious because I know mainly it's the Indian audience, but cool. Okay, there's some folks joining outside India as well. Awesome. I live in Chicago here in the United States. It's 10:45 a.m. in the morning, so it's not that late for me. So thanks for replying and then going along with me. Here are some things you want to keep in mind throughout the session. First thing is, I'm not going to have slides, unlike other presenters. What I would advise you to do is take a paper and pen, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds, because today is going to be the day you're going to submit your first conference proposal. That's the goal. And for that, I'm going to give you a lot of actionable strategies to overcome some of the limiting beliefs, your stage fear, your fear of being judged, how to structure your talk. All those things I'm going to cover during this talk. So take a paper and pen and be prepared to take notes. And Suchita said, Uncle Wariku sweatshirt. So it's funny, we were just talking about it. Yeah, so I use Let's Do Epic Shit quite a bit during my talk. So I make these sweatshirts and hats. And I did this in 2020 when I released my book. And then I saw recently Warku also released his book, Do Epic Shit. But yeah, he does do epic shit. And I do Let's Do More Epic Shit. And apart from that, I have other inspirational quotes on my t-shirts and hats on my bookstore. You can go check it out. But yeah, thanks for that. Anyways, so be ready to take notes. Have a paper and pen, okay? And whenever you have questions, feel free to put that on the chat window. I'll try to address it as and when I go through the different topics. But the goal is to speak for about the first 20 minutes and then open it up to Q&A. So that's the goal here, okay? But the ultimate goal, remember, is to motivate all of you here to actually submit your first conference talk. Or if you already have a conference talk coming up, you need to give a kick-ass conference talk. So that's my goal over here, okay? So with that being said, let's just get started. I love sharing stories first to set some context. So let's start with my story of how I got into speaking. And again, as and when you have questions, feel free to put that in the chat window, okay? Some of you may know my story from my previous talks or from my book, but here's a refresher of what actually happened. So I grew up in Chennai, from the southern part of India. It's funny I say southern part of India because I'm used to saying that because I'm I usually speak to a non-Indian audience. But anyways, I grew up in Chennai, and I was the younger of the two kids. And I grew up in a family where everyone was super smart. Like my brother, he has 3 masters and a PhD. He was like a rocket scientist. And then you have my dad, who studied in scholarships since he was born. Then there I was, the average kid who didn't do well in anything. You name it, sports, academics. I was average in everything. So I put in a lot of effort to stand out from the crowd, be like other cousins around me from an academic standpoint. But every time I try to live up to people's expectations, I ended up getting disappointed because I realized that I could never make people happy. So all these constant experiences made me a shy, introverted kid. I was in a shell. I felt like an outcast growing up, and no one ever thought anything good about me. And that was my entire childhood experience. I had all these fears. I had fear of failure, fear of being judged, fear of being ignored, fear of public speaking. I had all these fears growing up. And my whole life has been about overcoming these fears one by one. But for today's discussion, I'm going to talk about how I overcome the fear of public speaking and fear of being judged, because they're very relevant to the survey and the question which was asked before I started talking, right? So the way I got into public speaking was, once I entered the tech space, I started writing down different fears I had, and then I wrote down different strategies to overcome those fears. But till 2011, one of the things I was constantly avoiding was the fear of public speaking, because I had all the feelings people shared here, which is I had stage fear. If I talk to more than one person, I get nervous and I used to start stuttering. And then I had this fear of what would people think about me if I say something wrong. Until 2011, this constantly haunted me every 2 days. I used to think about this while sleeping, while walking, while at work. And then one day I saw this email for a conference, right? It said, come to this conference in Seattle and then learn from other testers and developers. Usually I'll delete those emails, like spam emails. But then for some reason on that day, I just kept looking at that email. It was as if it was talking to me, saying, dude, one of your goals was to overcome a lot of fears, but you keep putting off the fear of overcoming the fear of public speaking. Why are you doing that? This is your chance. It felt as if it's talking to me. So this was in 2011 when I just had come to the United States, just a couple of years before that. And I didn't have any money. I had student loans, and getting jobs were really hard. In spite of that, I swiped my credit card for 3,000 US dollars when I didn't have any money, just to go to this conference, because my company was not ready to sponsor me. And I wanted to change the way I was, because even talking in meetings was really nerve-wracking for me. So I go to this conference in Seattle in 2011. I see a lot of frac sessions. I saw some good speakers, and frankly, I saw a lot of bad speakers. And luckily, I saw some bad speakers, because that's when I had this epiphany, that eureka moment, thinking that what better way to overcome this fear of public speaking than actually becoming a speaker, right? So that's when I decided, you know what? I'm going to get into speaking. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. So in that conference in 2011, I networked with a lot of speakers who would come there. I asked them how they write proposals, how they come up with talk ideas, how they overcome stage fear. And then when I came back, I took action on it, because one of the biggest problems with people is we get all motivated. You may attend my talk, you may attend an amazing workshop, but then that high will be there for 2-3 days. And then what happens is you come home, you don't take any action, then you go back to the same life you're living all along. And that's 99% of the people. But since you're joining this meetup, I mean, this event, it already shows that you're different from other people. I believe you folks are that 1% category of people who are going to take action on the things you're going to learn. And that's the line which separates people who want to become legends and the people who actually become legends. And luckily, I decided to pave my path to become a legend. So I decided to take action. So anyways, to cut a long story short, I started speaking in small meetup groups in 2012 to gain some confidence. Then in 2013, after 7 months and 23 trial runs of my first talk, I gave my first conference talk. And it was a huge hit. People are talking. It was in the US, and then people are talking. There's this funny Indian dude, but he's super impactful, great message. You should check him out. One thing led to another. Fast forwarding to now, 2022, I've spoken at 100 plus conferences. I've given 2 TEDx talks, which have over 150,000 views. I've been over 150 podcasts as a guest. I've been in 15 to 20 TV interviews. So how did this transformation happen? What are the different strategies which I took to make the transformation? And remember, I was a shy, introverted kid. And now I'm different. I'm here talking to you about how to become a speaker. I'm an average guy. If I can do it, so can all of you listening right now. And today I'm going to give you actionable strategies to make you have this transformation as well. So be ready to take notes starting from now, because I'm going to give you all the strategies you'll ever need to write a conference proposal, to prepare for a talk, to prepare your slides, to overcome the fear of public speaking. Okay. Okay, cool. So let's start with the first thing. The first thing we need to know is, what is the basic structure of a good talk? What is the basic structure of a good talk? That's the first thing we need to talk about. Humans relate to stories. When you tell a story, you're painting a picture of what the situation was. You're making people come to your story as if you're watching a movie. You want to make people see what you went through. That's why you always have to share stories. So if you notice, how did I start this talk? I shared a story. And then I'm 100% sure, for at least for half of you here, it would have touched some nerve or the other. That is what you need to do. Always start with stories. So I'm going to share my screen. And again, this is going to be an interactive live demo kind of talk. It's going to be a different type of talk than you have seen with other people, because I really want to make you do epic shit when it comes to speaking. And that's what the goal is. So I'm going to share my screen and give you an outline of what a talk structure should look like, starting with stories. And then there's some key components. So I'm going to share my screen here. Let me know when you can see my screen. Okay, cool. I can see my screen. So, okay, cool. So I spent $10,000 in a speaking course, and I've done a lot of investment to become a decent speaker. And you're lucky that because of Mahesh and the team, you're getting all this for free. But whatever I'm sharing are the golden nuggets which you need to kickstart your speaking career. So first thing is the structure. So if you see the structure of a good talk, you need to start with a story. Okay, just like how I started with a story. Then people come into my world, they feel what I feel, and then you should have a common theme. So for example, the theme of today's talk is how to start your public speaking journey. Okay, and then you should have 3 subtopics you want to talk about when it comes to the main theme. So if you see the screenshot here, so you start with the story, then you introduce the topic, which I did. Then you talk about one story, then talk about the first theme. Then you talk about the second story, introduce the second theme. Then you start the third story, introduce the third theme. And then finally, you need to have a call to action. Okay, what should people do with what you said? This is the basic structure of a impactful talk. So if you see a lot of TED Talks and TEDx Talks, they'll follow the rule of threes, which means that you have one main theme and then you have three sub themes. So Steve Jobs is one of the greatest speakers of all times. His iPhone launch, iPad launch events were like a magic show. Like people used to wait in line to attend his kickoff events. That is because he followed the rule of threes. He'll always have three topics, subtopics connected to the main theme. For example, the main theme would be the launch event, and then the three themes would be the three items he's going to launch. And for each of those items, he'll tell a story, then launch the first product, tell a story, launch the second product, tell a story, launch the third product. And then he'll have a call to action saying, now it's available for 30% discount. That's the call to action, right? That's a simple example. This is a structure of an impactful talk, right? Stories, then have a main theme, then three sub-themes. And for each of the sub-themes, you need to have a story, then information, then story, information, then call to action. So that is the structure you need to have if you really want to give an impactful talk, right? And talking about talks, and again, as and when I'm speaking, if you have any questions, keep putting that in the chat window. But my goal is to give you a lot of strategy. So just keep writing down stuff because it's going to be like, there'll be a lot of information on you right now, but it's going to be really impactful. So continuing with the whole outline thread, the first 5 minutes of your talk is the most important. Because research has found that you can lose an audience or gain an audience within the first 5 minutes. So if you noticed, what did I do? I started saying, put some emojis, have you had dinner? I engaged the audience. So I'm grabbing your attention, okay? Then what did I do? Then I started with a story, which I was hoping to be inspirational and motivational, right? And then I got into the topic. So I spent the first 3-4 minutes trying to set the stage. So that is the most important thing you really need to do. So if you watch some of my TEDx talks, I'll put the links towards the end. In the first 5 minutes, I had humor so that people laugh in the middle. Whenever I'm talking about a serious thing, then I put humor. I actually sit down and write jokes for big talks because I really love humor and engaging the audience, right? So the first 5 minutes is really key. You need to figure out, okay, how are you going to engage the audience? Think about ways you can engage the audience, okay? That is really important. So to summarize the first section, the basic structure of a good talk, you need to start with the story, then introduce the main theme. Then you have 3 sub-themes under the main theme. For each of the sub-themes, you're going to have a story, then information, story, information, and then a call to action. That's what you need to do, okay? I'm going to stop sharing now. So that's the first thing, what a good talk should have. Let's talk about the second thing people talk about. You may say, oh, Raj, this is well and good, but tell me how to give a talk at tech conferences, because you give TEDx talks and, they're motivational, inspirational. I know Steve Jobs and blah, blah, blah. But for me to give a technical talk or a talk at a technical conference or a testing conference, what do I do in terms of my structure? So that is the second thing I want to talk about. It's the same concept. You need to share stories throughout your presentation. So start with the story, your personal story. You don't have to make up stories. You have so much experience. So start with a story which could align with the theme and set the stage to the topic. Okay. And then one slight variation for talks and tech conferences is people are, so strategic. They just want you to give, okay, tell me the 5 things you want me to learn. That's it. Tell me the 2 things you want me to learn. That's it, right? So tech folks are usually like that. So what you need to do is start with an agenda slide. So again, it's the same concept where you'll have one theme and then 3 sub-themes. That is always going to be the case. But then in terms of going slightly deeper, you start with an agenda slide in terms of, okay, what are you going to cover today? What are the 3 things you're going to cover today? Okay. And then the flow you want to follow is for the first sub theme, you should talk about a story. What is the problem? What is the solution? What is the lessons learned? Then for the second sub theme, a story. What is the problem? What was the solution? What is the lessons learned? The same thing for the third. And the fourth thing will be call to action. Okay, now with these strategies, what can you do? That'll be the takeaway section. What are some key takeaways which you can implement in your project? And then you can finish off with the summary slide, say in terms of what you actually covered. So this is how you need to structure your talks in testing conferences, because we are all groomed in such a way that we think analytically in terms of, okay, we want this. So give them the structure. You'll have an agenda slide, then you'll have 3 themes under one sub theme. And it's okay if you have 5 themes, but the rule of 3 is a good thing to follow. But say if you have 5 themes, it's okay. But for each of them, talk about a story, a problem, solutions, lessons learned. And then in the end, takeaways, then the summary. And in that way, it'll be a really neat flow throughout your slides. And you let people know, okay, how you can use the concepts taught in the talk in your real life projects as well. There's a question by Mahati saying, but everyone may not have a structure. What do we do in that case? So in that case, you have to come up with a structure. So that I'll talk about how to come up with a structure. When I talk about how to come up with talk ideas and then how to structure it, you always need to have a structure. You always have to have a structure for the talk. At least you're not going to give an impactful talk. You won't be called again as a speaker. People are not going to take you seriously. You always have to have a structure. And we're going to talk about that in a second. Great question. So just to summarize where we are at right now, we talked about the basic structure of a good talk. And then we talked about how to give talks at technical conferences, right? The next question is how to draft your talk. How do you come up with talk ideas? That goes into Mahati's question. So this is what I do to come up with talk ideas. So whenever I'm going for a run or talking to people at conferences or reading books, listening to podcasts, checking out videos on Instagram, whenever I get ideas for a talk or an article, I actually note it down in my Notes app. So on iPhone, you have a note-taking app called Notes app, and then you can write notes there. Or if you use Evernote, you can do that. But whatever apps you're going to use that, right? So for example, let me just quickly share this. I'm going to share my screen here, and then I'll give you an example, right? Let me see here. Let me see. I want to open up one of my notes here, and 2020. Okay, writing topics. Social posting. Hang with me here because I want to give you an idea of how it looks like. So if you look here, so before the start of the session, I was talking about how I post content 6 times a week on LinkedIn. That's because I have these notes app. I already know what not content, different content ideas. Look at this. These are all content which I have not even posted. So as and when I'm walking or talking, just keep noting down stuff. For example, here are some talk ideas I have, right?
Raj, I think, Raj, sorry to interrupt you, but I think you have to increase the font size a bit. It's a little, the font size is a little small here.
Oh, okay. But the key was to...
Yeah, key was to, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Just to look at, but thank you for letting me know. Keep telling me stuff like that. So if you see, I have talk ideas. I have workshop ideas. Then I have ideas for promo. I have ideas for social media content. I have one note on my notes app. I note down all the ideas I get as and when I'm walking, talking. So for you to start with, sit and write down different things which you can talk about, which you can think you can share with people. That's where you need to start. And then put that in a notes app. And the reason I like it to be online is because You never know when you're going to get an idea. I get a lot of idea when I'm in the bathroom, right? So you never know when you're going to get an idea. So open the Notes app or Evernote or whatever text document you're going to use and just keep noting down ideas. That is number one. And then number two is based on, say you have 7 ideas. And one of the ideas is how to use Python 101 for testers. Say that's a topic because you're learning Python and then you're doing it. Say that is a topic you're really interested among the 10 other topics. Okay, now you have a theme. Okay, that's what I want to talk about. The next thing you need to think about is, again, do this in a paper and pen. Write down all the things you want to talk about for the Python 101 for testers. Just bullet point it. Just keep writing. Do a mind dump of all the things you want to talk about for that main theme. Okay? And do this in an uninterrupted manner. No Facebooking, text messaging. Lock yourself in a room for an hour and do this. Okay? Now, you would have had like 15, 20 bullet points for the main theme, which is Python 101 for testers. Next thing you have to do is think about 3 subcategories under which you can group all those 15 items into these 3 or 4 subcategories. Okay? And it doesn't have to be perfect, just an outline. You're just coming up with an outline. So then you put the bullet points under one category. So for example, you would say installing PyTest, right? Maybe that is one category. And then you put 3 to 4 bullet points related to installation under that subcategory. And then how to run Python tests, right? That could be one category. And then 3 to 4 bullet points related to writing tests could be under that category. So now you have a main structure, and I'm just giving examples on the fly. I didn't prepare for all these things, but I'm just giving you a raw example, right? So now we have Python 101 for testers. Then you have how to install PyTest, then how to write tests, how to execute this. So that may be the 3 subtests, subtopics, and then under that, you can organize the bullet points. So that's how, to Mahati's question, that's how you want to structure your talk. You always have to have a structure. The number one mistake people make is they immediately start going to the slides and then doing whatever stuff they feel like. No. Everything first happens in pen and paper, okay? And then looking at your ideas, notes, that's where it starts. Theme, again, mapping into the outline structure. So just make sure you do that. So that is how you come up with, so in terms of how you come up with talk idea, so that is how you draft your talk, right? So till now I've talked about structure of a good talk, how to give talks at technical conferences. The third thing I just mentioned was how do you come up with talk ideas, and how do you draft, how do you write, how do you come up with the talk theme, okay? The next thing is how do you write conference proposals, which people always have a question about. So here's how you do it, okay? So Python 101 for testers, say that's the talk. First thing is you need to make the title sexy. Don't ask me why, but that's how it is. I've been in so many program committee review sessions. When you have something immediately catchy, then it draws attention, right? So say Python 101 for testers, maybe something sexy could be, how do you make sure Python doesn't bite you, or some random stuff like that, right? Because it makes the title really catchy. And then now think of it like an Instagram feed. So you have the phone and then you're just scrolling. Then all of a sudden you stop at a video because it's catchy. They have some cute baby pictures of cute cats. It's the exact same concept. So you need to have a catchy title. So make the title catchy. The next thing you want to think about is the abstract. The abstract has to have, it should be 2 paragraphs, 2 to maximum 3 paragraphs. It should be an essay, and it should have the following. The first paragraph should have 2 to 3 lines about the topic. So say, for example, so I do a talk on career advancement, right? How to advance your careers in tech. The first 2-3 lines would be, research has found that people spend 90,000 hours at work during their lifetime. So now 2-3 lines, I'm talking about the topic and the research if possible. Okay. First thing is talking about the topic, 2-3 lines. The next thing in the first paragraph should be, what's the current problem that exists? So the problem is people are have this feeling that they're stuck in their career. They feel they have so much to offer, but they don't know how to take the next path in their career, next step in their career. They feel that there's not enough opportunity. So now the next 2-3 lines, I'll talk about this problem, right? So the first paragraph is about 2-3 lines about the topic, then 2-3 lines about the problem. The second paragraph is where you come in the picture. So you'll say, in my talk, I'm going to give these solutions to address that problem. So the second paragraph talks about what your talk is going to cover and what your attendees are going to take away from the talk. So going with my use case, I would say in my talk, I'm going to help people identify their ideal career, figure out how to strategically apply for jobs, how to do salary negotiation and then ace interviews, how to be successful at their current job. Okay, so now I address the problem. And then in the second paragraph, the first 2-3 lines are about your talk, and the next 2-3 lines would be what the attendees can take away from your session. So the attendees are going to learn how to strategically apply their job search. I'm just making up examples here. And then they can apply these things in their real life projects as well. That's it. That's how you write an abstract. So you have 2 paragraphs containing 4 components. First 2-3 lines about the topic in the first paragraph. Then the next 2-3 lines in the paragraph is about the problems. Then the second paragraph is about how your talk is going to solve those problems or help highlight things related to that problems. And then the last part in the second paragraph is about what attendees are going to take away from it. And then have 3 to 4 bullet points of key takeaways, because when you submit a conference proposal, usually people ask 3 takeaways, right? So that is how you write a good abstract. Sexy, catchy title, 2 paragraphs containing the 4 components, then 3 key takeaways, okay? So that is the key part to think about as well. And yeah, don't worry, I'm going to give time for people to ask questions as well. But I think these are key for people to start their speaking journey. That's why I'm covering the basics here, and keep taking notes. And of course, if you have any questions further, even after the session, just ping me on LinkedIn. I pretty much live on LinkedIn, so just ping me there. The next thing is how to overcome the fear of public speaking. So till now, what we have covered is what is the basic structure of a good talk, how to give technical talks, how to draft your talk, how to come up with talk ideas, then how to write a conference proposal. The next thing I'm talking about is the stage fear part. How do you overcome the fear of public speaking? This is a thing, and I tell this to all people. There's a beauty in getting uncomfortable to become comfortable. You really have to push yourself out of your comfort zone if you really want to seek opportunities. And especially when it comes to speaking, you have to take that first step to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. And the way to do that is you don't have to blindly go to a conference and then just start talking. You can do this strategically, like how I did it. So first is you could give 5-minute talks, like in conferences like this. You could start doing 1-minute videos on LinkedIn. You could start going to meetup events and start presenting in meetup groups. You can start attending events like this and listening to what other speakers do to get rid of their fear of public speaking. And then you could then start writing abstract and submit to a conference. So in this way, you're taking a step-by-step approach, like you're pushing yourself slowly, and then slowly you'll start getting fear of public speaking. I know there were a couple of comments saying, oh man, what if I forget what I'm saying in the middle of the talk? Who gives a shit? This is the thing, folks. We live in a world where people love to gossip. And there's multiple problems for many people. Say, for example, I'm right now giving this talk. I forget stuff. Okay, you're going to remember that maybe for 5-10 minutes. I mean, say for half an hour or 1 day. And then there's going to be another problem where your focus is going to shift. And that's how life is. You're not Jeff Bezos. No one gives a shit about you. Yes, I know that is very raw, but that's the fact of life. Okay. So You're not Elon Musk. You're not Jeff Bezos. You're doing your best. And whenever you forget something, instead of saying, just take a deep breath. So what I was trying to say was, you could do that. Or you could say, man, I completely forgot my train of thought. But anyways, moving on, then move on to the next one. That's how you handle situations. Yes, I know it's easier said than done, but the point is, remember that no one actually cares about you, number one. No one gives a shit about you, number two. Number three is you're sharing your story. That's what people want to hear. People want to see the vulnerability. People want to see you be you on the stage. And I have stumbled so many times at conferences. But of course, in social media, you may not hear that. But I'm telling you, it happens to every speaker, irrespective of how many talks you've given. So keep that in mind, okay? That you're just doing your best. Have a structure, have a plan, and do your best. That's it. And if you forget something, move on to the next one. Take a deep breath, okay? People understand you're human. You giving the talk itself is the biggest step. People already know that you had so much guts and confidence. Not a lot of people can do that, but you did it. So think about that in terms of what happens if you mess up in speaking. I wrote an article about some pregame routines, which I follow before giving a big talk. It's on my LinkedIn page, on my LinkedIn article. A quick summary is I try to wake up early in the morning during a big talk. Then I do meditation. Then I work out. And then once I finish taking a shower and dressing up, then I stand in front of the mirror and say this, Raj, you're worth it. People want to hear your story. Let's go do epic shit. And that's it. And then I go do it. So that's my routine, which I follow every single time for bigger talks, right? Like my TEDx talks and stuff. But you can come up with what works for you. But again, I give a whole detail insight into what I do in my LinkedIn article. I can post that link after the talk as well. And finally, last thing I wanted to mention was things to avoid while talking. So don't use fillers. Funny story is, till about 6 years ago, whenever I forget something, I used to say, so, right. You know it, right? You know it, right? So, you know it, right? You know it, right? And then people actually gave me on the feedback saying you use right a lot. So everyone uses fillers. It just takes practice to figure out what you use. So right now, when I forget something, I pass like this. And then move on. So that I don't have So if you notice, did I have any filler throughout this talk? No, because I use breathing to give that pause and move on to the next one. So that is something you want to think about. And then if you're sitting and giving a virtual talk, make sure you don't keep rocking like this or like this. Don't keep turning on the chair like this. I used to do that. That's what I'm telling you. So when you're giving virtual talks, make sure you stay in one place. And then match your face and hand gestures. So if you see, I use a lot of hand gestures. And when I say something impactful, I say, let's do epic shit. So I go like this and then stress on it. So your hand gesture should match your body expressions as well. But yeah, so those are some things I actually wanted to talk about. And just in summary, what I covered, so I talk about structure of a talk, how to give technical talks, how to draft your talk, how to come up with talk ideas, how to overcome your fear of public speaking, things to avoid while talking. And in this chat window, I'm going to post some resources. And then on my LinkedIn, I'm going to post some resources as well. So make sure you follow me on LinkedIn, and then you can tag TestAway as well. And then if you could also share one thing which resonated with you from this talk and share with other people on LinkedIn, that would be great as well. But I'm going to post some links here. But that being said, I'm going to pass here because as you can see, when it comes to speaking, I'm super passionate about it. I can keep talking for 4 hours, but I'm going to stop here. I know there were some questions on the comments, so I'm going to quickly skim through it. And Ashutosh is also has some questions, I feel. So
Yes,
let me see.
I have the questions. I have the questions noted down with
Okay,
me.
you can ask the questions and we'll go from there.
Okay. Okay. So the question was from Diana Keen. Just a minute, please. Okay. She mentions our conferences. I've been really excited about the topics, but disappointed by the actual talk content. Like it's a catchy title, but not so good content, which can be a very common case in general. Have you ever created a talk that was inspired by a bad talk? That's what she's trying to ask you.
So just to summarize, you said since you have a catchy title, then people come to the talk, then it's a really shitty talk, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So how do you avoid that? Oh,
Yeah.
you have it over here. Okay, cool. As a conf, been like said, have you ever created a talk that was inspired by a disappointment by action? So this is the thing, folks. There are always going to be cases where this catchy title, but the content is really bad. That's why you have the option at conferences just to walk out. So this, if you go to Selenium conferences, they actually mention it. The law of 2 feet, which is you can literally just walk out of the track session and then go to the next track session. That's it. It's as simple as that, right? But another thing you could do to avoid that problem is do the research on the speaker beforehand. They usually would have previous talks, so you can get a feel for whether they're bullshitting or they really have value to give, right? So see, I use word right there. That's the way I do it. But the point is, you can do your prior research on the speaker to know what value they bring. Second thing is I know because of the catchy title, people get into it, but that's how you do conference talks, and that's how conference board pick, because they're like 200, 500 abstracts, right? Then people skim through it, then look at the catchy title. So unfortunately, that's the case. But we also, of course, see the content, but then the speaker delivery could be different. That's where if a talk is bad, just go on to another track session. That's pretty much it. So live 2 feet and then researching the speaker. That's what I would say you probably want to do.
I think she also wanted to ask, did you ever do a talk which was inspired by a bad talk? I think that was the last part of her question also.
Oh, was inspired by a bad talk? I would say there were at least 3 to 4 talks like that. I think one of the talks was testers need to be technical. I think there was one of the talks. I know it's super controversial. And then I think I gave a talk at a meetup group saying how non-technical testers can also contribute, right? So that's a simple example. And then when there's something controversial saying this is the best approach for public speaking, then I hate the word best practices. It's about good practices, which applies to the context. So maybe in my next talk, I would say, here are some things people would say, but you have to apply it based on the context, right? So yes, there are examples of bad talks giving me ideas for new talks as well. Yeah.
New talks, yeah. Got it. So again, these are a bunch of questions. I'll combine them together. So what methods do you use for getting feedback if the conference doesn't provide a method for feedback? And also, that was the question which was in our head also, that how do we rate the success or failure of our talk? How do we get to know that whether the talk was successful or not, or was it a not so good talk? And how do we deal with non-constructive feedbacks? Because at times we'll get very rude, rash feedback also. A part of which you already mentioned, that nobody gives a shit about you. But
Yep.
I think that's if you want to reinforce your answers again.
Okay, so yeah, I think there are multiple parts to your question. So let's address the first part in terms of how do you know whether you're given a good talk? What is the metrics you may use, right, to make it simple? So when you attend a conference, they have a feedback rating thing. So that is one metric you could use where people give some comments and give some ratings. But main thing I use during my talks is I have a trusted circle of friends who really want me to grow and develop. So I'll make them attend my talk. And then after the talk, I'll go to them and say, hey, what do you think about it? What are some good things? What are some improvement points? Never say, what are some negative things or bad things? Because when you say negative things and bad things, then people are prone to think, okay, what can I find negative right now? But it has to be natural. So the words you use is really important. You should say, what are the good things and what are some things which I could improve on? And have those few trusted circles and then make them come to your talk. And then their feedback is the number one valid feedback you need to pay attention to. Okay. In terms of the speaker ratings you get, sometimes it's out of context, sometimes it's good. So take it with a grain of salt, but just use it as an approximation of, if you see a common theme, for example, if I kept using so, and that 4 people said you use so a lot, then okay, that is some theme. So those are the 2 metrics I usually use. And then I go to people and say, hey, what do you think about the talk? What do you think about the talk? During networking events, during social gatherings. So that's how I collect feedback. The second part of the question is, how do you handle negative feedback? You need to be very careful on who you're receiving feedback from. So that goes to my first part, which is you should only believe the people in your trusted circle, because if they say something, that means, okay, there's something you want to work on. But it doesn't mean you ignore other people's feedback. Other people would say, hey, Raj, you're too aggressive for me. I was expecting this, I was expecting that. You should hear feedback, okay? Let your ego aside, put your ego aside, and then hear feedback. Then if they say you're very aggressive, it's okay. Don't immediately rush to conclusions. Ask them the clarifying question. That's where people miss out the point. Ask them, okay, when you say aggressive, what are some things which affected you? Take notes. Don't defend yourself. Just take notes. So whenever I go to conferences, people may not have noticed this. I always have a notebook. This is called my speaking notebook. So I go around, and usually I do this on my phone. I have a list called feedback, and then I keep putting stuff. But then if I have my notebook in hand, I'll go around, and then while talking, I'll take notes. And this is how I improve. This is how I improve day in and day out. So that's how you want to handle negative feedback, which is don't immediately rush to conclusions, but ask a clarifying question, take notes, and see whether you can implement it in your context. If someone says I'm aggressive, I ask them why, and then they would say, no, you talk like epic shit and I don't like swearing. Okay, I understand, but this is my style. I'm sorry you don't like it, but this is my style. But I'll tell myself that's my style, right? So that feedback I'll ignore. But the point is, at least I'll take notes. So that was the second part of the question. Did it have a third part in your question?
I think these were the important parts.
Okay.
Okay. Very interesting questions coming up, and I think these are really nice.
I'm going to stay here for a long time, so people can be here, ask me any questions. So
yeah. Okay. So this is a question from Prachi, who says, how to know that the audience is engaging with the content or not? And these are related questions. How do we tackle the situation when you're presenting something and you see some confusing faces and you get nervous even being confident while delivering the talk? So how do we see how are people engaging, and how do we tackle a situation where people look confused by their face? As much as you were confident while entering the room, but by seeing confused faces, it's very natural to be a little nervous.
Yep.
So these are the 2 questions, related questions.
Great question. So first thing is pacing. So, okay, this is my office room. So if I take my chair like this and say this is a stage, first thing is you have to make sure you follow the triangle strategy. So when you talk at a conference, you go here and say, so here are the 3 things I wanted to do. And then you walk here and say, the first thing is, and then you come back here and say, the second thing is. So you constantly have to keep engaging the audience by moving. That is number 1. And the reason you want to do that is, which comes to your question, you're going to see different faces, confused faces, nodding faces, and then keen faces, people interestingly looking at you and hearing you. You have to lock your attention to the people who are paying attention and then mask everything else. So when I go to this side and then I see Ashutosh, nodding and listening intently. So whenever I go this side next time, I'm going to look at Ashutosh.
Yeah.
And then when I go this side, if I look at Mahesh, who's keep nodding and stuff, Then every time I go this side, irrespective of whether people are confused or not, I'll be looking at Mahesh. And then when I come here, then I'll find, so the first step is make sure you pace yourself, follow the triangle rule. So you need to go here, then here, and then here when you're on a stage, so that you address the entire conference. And then when you go to each corner, identify the people who are listening to you, okay? And then just lack attention to that. That's it. And that's what is going to help, because you're always going to have people who do not like your talk. You're always going to have people who are confused. You cannot change your talk midway because of that. So you prepared something, that's what you're going to deliver, okay? But then as and when you start giving a lot of talks, you can modify it on the fly. I do it a lot of times. When I say a joke and no one laughs, I won't move on to the next one. I would say, wow, this is a tough crowd, man. I took 1 hour to write this joke, but no one is laughing. And then people laugh. So that you'll get as and when you become good in speaking. But to start with, just lock eyes with people who are interested in you. So that is a strategy which is going to really help you out.
Okay. There's a follow-up question on this, and this is a pretty interesting one. Suppose if the person who was nodding earlier now gets confused, how do you tackle that situation? Do you find another nodder there?
You find another nodder. That's it. You find another person interested. And if no one is nodding, just be confident that, you're going to do your best, and then just keep going. Because this is the thing. You cannot appeal to all kinds of audience. For example, the way I speak, the way I do things, not a lot of people may like it. The way I coach people, not a lot of people like it, right? And that's okay. That's why I work only with people who can handle me, right? I'm not like a bully, but the point is I'm very frank and open. And if some people do not like it, then so be it, right? So you cannot please everyone. So you should go with that mentality, okay? And then lock eyes with the nodders. If there are no nodders, then just believe in yourself that you're doing the best, and then just keep going, okay? And you have to pace yourself as well. A lot of things, this is what is going to happen for first-time speakers. No one is going to be nodding, and then immediately start panicking. Oh my God, am I saying the right things? Is this talk even engaging? And when they're panicking, we Indians, what we do is we'll start talking faster. Okay, we'll say because this, because that, blah, 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 and then you just want to get it over with. Don't make that mistake. Go back to the basics of what I said. Take a breath. Then go on to the next one. Take your time. That's why if it's I'm generally good at it. So if it's a 45-minute talk, prepare to speak only for 30 minutes. Because if you're like me, I usually try only 30 minutes, and then eventually it'll go for 45 minutes. I know that, right? So for example, this one, I thought it'd be 20 minutes. Then I think I spoke for 25, 30 minutes at least. So the point is, prepare for just a little bit shorter one, and then you could always expand it, right? So those are some strategies to think about to give a good talk, and then not feel that people are not listening to you.
Got it. This is an interesting and possibly one of the very common anecdotes with all of us. It says, I start speaking fast, and sometimes my mind goes blank, or my brain is telling me what to speak next before I even finished my last word. Mm-hmm. My legs start shaking when I am in front of the crowd, or my voice is shaky. How do I avoid this kind of a situation?
So that goes back to some of the strategies which I mentioned before. From a stage fear standpoint, remember that no one actually cares, okay? If you mess up, people remember it for a day or two or for a week, then they move on to the next one. And pretty much 3/4 of people you'll never even meet again, okay? Yeah, so have that mindset. If you go, for example, I speak at conferences in Poland and stuff. I'm not going to meet 3/4 of those people. I actually do not care. When I say do not care, again, it's contextual. I really care about people, but I don't care about each person's opinion, because I know I'm coming here to add value. That's what I mean, okay? So don't take it in a negative way. What I'm trying to say is, you cannot please other people. Then just think about, okay, I know what I'm doing. I'm just going to go with it, and that is going to give you confidence. But the second part of it was, my mind goes faster than my delivery. and then it leads to problems. That's where you need to have cues, different cues on your slides. So what do I mean by that? So let me just give you a quick example here. I'm going to share my screen, and let's see. You should be able to. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
So for example, this is a talk I'm going to give next week at a developer conference, right? You need to have cues. And if you look at it, I follow whatever I say. I always introduce first myself and then my book, but then I follow the rule of threes. How do we become toxic leaders? What are the 3 environments? How to come out of being a toxic leader? Rule of threes. But then I start with the story for each topic. So whatever I said, but then I have some cues on what to do. So for example, say this statistic, it's also mentioned that, oh, I know this may be really small for you. 1 second, hold on. How do you view zoom in? Okay. Oh, actually, you could do Command Plus because I'm using a Mac.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's really big. Okay, so if you see over here, I have this line. It's also mentioned that 73% of them have claimed to have worked with a toxic boss. That's my cue for the next one, because now I said, so when I plan the slide, I know that, okay, 73% of them have worked with a toxic boss. That means the next topic is related to working with toxic bosses. Then immediately I know what I'm going to say next. Then I give examples of toxic bosses. So you can have cues on the slides. And then for each of the cues, you have to think, okay, what this cue means for me? What this cue means for the next one? And use your slides. So when I do this, I know I'm going to talk about Adam Newman, right? And then if I do this, I know I'm going to talk about Boeing. So have some cues. And then a study has found that there's a direct correlation between job insecurity and mental health. That's my cue that I'm going to start talking about insecurity. So that is how you organize your thoughts. And also, if you notice my slides, there's always a picture and then 1 or 2 lines. That's how you want your slides to be. A lot of people just have everything they want to talk about on slides. It's really hard to read. So what you need to do is have pictures, and then always have pictures, and then maybe a text, and then talk to this. So that is something you want to keep in mind. But anyways, that is the answer for how you can control your pacing. And sometimes you may start really fast in the 3 minutes, but then realize it, and then so going to the next topic, you have the control at any point of time. No one is holding you to gunpoint and saying, okay, you have to talk fast. So you have the control. So you just take a deep breath, pause, and then keep going. Okay.
Got it. Another interesting question again. Do you have a presenter notes in your deck, or do you typically memorize the content? Or let's say, since you are a seasoned speaker, the perspective for you might be a little different from somebody who's just starting now.
Great question. Yes, since I'm a seasoned speaker, I usually never memorize any of my talks. So for example, I give you so many strategies here. I literally have a text document here with 5 bullet points. That's it. And I've been talking because I live what I preach. So it's easy for me to talk. But if you're a first-time speaker, here are some things you could do. Write down, take a Word document. Always first start with a Word document. Slides is always the last part you need to do. So remember I told you, identify bullet points, then put them into categories, 3 categories, right? And then use that Word doc, and then under those categories, start writing down what you want to talk about. So you'll have like a 10-page doc of different things you want to talk about. And then what you're going to do is then start preparing the slides, and then take the notes you put in appropriately into each slide. And what I would do is take a printout of this Word doc with all the speaker notes, and then keep going through it. And then at least maybe memorize some of the keywords, right? Which you want people to know about. So, and you can have those printed speaker notes when you're giving the talk. What I usually do is, so I don't do it anymore, but when I before, what I used to do is I used to have the printouts of everything. It'll be on my podium, okay? And then as and when I move on to the next topic, I'll move the previous paper back, and then the new paper will be there, and then I'll have bullet points of the things which I'm going to talk about. So when I'm pacing this way, I come to my laptop, near my laptop. There, I'll see the next topic which I need to talk about. So I already have printed notes of hints of what I'm going to talk about. So that is a great way to know. So to summarize what I've told till now, print out the Word doc with all the speaker notes, then memorize at least the key words which you want to talk about. Take a printout of them and put that in your speaker podium. And every time you do that triangle pacing, when you come towards the laptop, then whatever is the next one, bring that to the top and put the old one to the bottom. And that will be a good thing. That is one. Another thing which I've seen people doing, which which my wife does, is note cards. So you can have sticky notes, but then you have note cards. And then you could write different note cards. And then as and when you can have the note cards in one, and then where's my slide changer? And the slide changer in another. And then when I go like this, then I say, okay, so talking about the next thing, then you put the old note card at the back, and then look at the next one, and then you can talk. A lot of people use note cards as well. So you could just say, okay, so next thing I'm going to talk about is the 5 things you could do for effective communication. Once you finish that note card, you can put it back, and then next will be leadership. Okay, the next. So in that way, you have, and so you could use note cards, and that is totally acceptable when you give talks. Even in big keynotes, you could use note cards. So those are the 2 strategies you could use to memorize a talk and make sure you don't forget what you want to say.
Okay. Raj, this is the question which we had. This is for second-time speakers. Let's say you started your speaking journey at some point of time in your life, and you have not so good memories about it, right? And they might keep coming and haunt you about that. Okay, the last time you spoke at a public platform, you were like bamboozled, or you were bashed very badly. How do we overcome the memories of our past speaking experience when we want to start afresh? Let's say a lot of us here might be second-time speakers who want to erase those memories and do not want us to haunt them, right?
So there's so many incidents which have happened. I've got a panic attack in middle of a talk, and then I had to take 3-minute break. So I've had a lot of shit which happened in my life. So just because I'm speaking like this doesn't mean I'm perfect by any means. I still have those moments. But okay, coming to the question, the thing is, it's always going to haunt you. And that's a good thing. Because when you have that fear that you want to do better and you don't want to repeat that mistake, then you'll do a better job of coming up with strategies to avoid that mistake. It's always going to be there in your mind, but use that to drive you to give a better talk. So when I say drive you to a better talk, what does it actually mean? Note down different things that didn't work out well and which worked well from the first talk.
Yeah.
What I do is, again, I'm a super strategic guy. So I have a notes called things to avoid. So whenever before I go to a talk, I have a checklist of things to avoid. One of the things are so and right, because I use it quite a bit. And then shaking, I shake quite a bit. So I have all these things, a checklist of things we have to avoid. So you come up with a checklist. And before you give the talk, just skim through the checklist to refresh your memory what you need to avoid. And then give the talk. And remember, when you give a talk, you've already reached the benchmark of success. Because not everyone, people walking in the street do not get accepted at conferences. Randomly, people do not give talks, but you put in the effort to write the abstract, get selected, prepare for the talk, prepare for the slides, and show up and share your story. That itself is a big thing. So you need to start thinking about the positive things which you've already done, and then let the positive reframing and the checklist of things to avoid help you. I have a checklist on my notes app on what to do before a keynote talk, right? Because See, I use right a lot, but I try to avoid that when speaking. So, see, again, so the things that I use this checklist to remind myself, okay, breathe, do this, do that. And if you're giving virtual talks, here's another strategy. On a post-it note, write down things you want to avoid. So one of the things I have is breathe, and then it's stuck to my lap on my TV, on my monitor screen here. So every time I look at it, I try to breathe and then go. Because when I get passionate about something like speaking or careers and stuff, you can't stop me. I can just keep going for 24 hours. Right? So I need to pause.
Yeah.
That's why I have those reminders. So those are some ways you could handle that situation.
Yeah. I also, for example, I speak a little fast. So I always have this somewhere written here, speak slow. So it's written on the iPad, and I keep looking at this. And sometimes I put it on the laptop itself that speaks slow, and because you end up speaking fast because that's your natural way of speaking out.
And for Indians, that's a thing, and because our language is like that, we speak fast. Even for like Spanish people, they speak fast. Is because of their culture, and there's nothing wrong with that. Even if you speak fast, if people can understand you, so be it. But irrespective of how your language is, it's good to pause, take a breath, and then speak. That's why comedians, they always pause to hear audience reaction. They'll tell a joke and then they'll just look at the audience like this and they'll laugh. That is called pacing. That's a technique comedians actually use. It's called timing jokes. So you say something and then expect audience reaction. That's the exact same thing when it comes to speaking as well. You need to pause, breathe, see the reaction, and then move forward. And again, at any point of time, remember you are in control of the situation, irrespective of how much you bomb in your talk. You have the control to get it back. You just have to pass and just move on to the next one.
Got it. I think we have talked about rejections a lot. If you could dive a little specific into how to handle abstract rejections, because we have talked about the later stage, when you go in public, you're bashed, how to handle rejections there. But the first step is to submit an abstract, and you might get rejected at the first stage itself. So how to handle abstract rejections, and how do we make sure, and how do we better use those abstracts which have been rejected over the, let's say in the recent conference where you submitted?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a couple of things. First thing is, applying for conferences is like applying for jobs. Okay, it's a numbers game. So your resume should be good. It should be catchy. Have the right keywords. Give good description. Exact same thing with your conference proposal. Sexy, catchy title. Then the 2-paragraph structure, which I mentioned. Then the 3 takeaways. Right. It's a numbers game. The reason I say numbers game is, again, let's go with the same analogy. When recruiters look at like 400, 500 resumes per day, okay? So they're going to just skim through, and then one they'll take and then do it. It's the exact same thing with conferences as well. Usually, people who review conference papers are people like me. They're not paid. Review committee members at conferences are not paid. They do it on a voluntary basis. And those people have different kinds of experiences and different mindsets, okay? So a talk which may appeal to me may not appeal to Ashutosh, may not appeal to Mahesh. So I will say rating 5, Ashutosh will give 1, and then Mahesh could give 3. That does not mean your talk is bad. It just means that the person who reviewed the talk, at that point of time, he fought with his wife or significant other,
that's true.
and then or was drinking or whatever it may be, and then rejected your paper. So it's not a direct, rejection is not directly proportional to your talent. Just like when you apply for jobs, rejection in jobs is not directly proportional to your talent because there's so many multiple factors involved. So that is the first thing you really need to keep in mind in terms of rejection. The second thing you want to keep in mind is when a person rejects you, try to ask feedback from conferences. For example, I've been a review committee member for Eurostar Agile Testing Days, and Agile Testing Days is really good because they actually give you feedback on why the proposal was rejected automatically, but not a lot of conferences do that. So what I would advise you to do is reach out to the conference who rejected your abstract and say, hey, do you have any constructive feedback so that next time I could make it better and submit the proposal? And if a person like me sees that email, I 100% would reply. So those are the two things you want to keep in mind. First thing is, don't take it personal. Second thing is, ask for feedback. And that's how you do it. And maybe one more third thing you could do is look at other conference proposals already online and get some ideas on how they're writing those conference proposals. And then you could also follow the same format, because that could increase your chances and getting selected as well. So those are some things you really want to keep in mind. And also remember, I didn't talk for this long so that people listen to this, get motivated. Then after 3 days, do not submit abstract.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. The reason I put in so much effort to come here with 4 days notice to speak here, and to really want to encourage people to get into speaking. You don't, anyone can become a speaker. It's just a matter of taking that first step. And I literally started with 1+1 in this session today of what you exactly need to do. So if you need further support or something, ping me on LinkedIn, follow me, because I also put videos on speaking and stuff as well. So make sure you take action, because that's what separates you from other people. Okay, so that is the most important thing. If it's one key takeaway, take action on the things you learned and the notes you have. So that's what my advice would be.